Hey there and welcome back to NBA 2K17. My name is Pete and today we complete the first year of NBA 2K17's MyGM or MyLeague mode with the Phoenix Suns. The Suns are, at least for the most part, a very young team. And of course, like the majority of young teams in the league, they are experiencing some growing pains and are therefore struggling a bit. Still, if we look a few years into the future, Phoenix could very well develop into a promising franchise. Most of us probably still remember Devin Booker's 70-point game back in March, which showed a brief glimpse of the greatness that might come out of Phoenix soon. But of course, there is more to the team than the 20-year-old sharpshooter, so let's have a closer look in our situation overview. Your starting point guard and, at least for the moment, your best player, that is 26-year-old Eric Bledsoe. Bledsoe is simply an all-around good player with no glaring weaknesses, and as he is well in his prime, he's one of your centerpieces in Phoenix. Behind him, the Suns have some youth with Tyler Ulis, as well as another large long-term contract on Brandon Knight. Rating-wise, Ulis has the slight edge and he's also 4 years younger than Knight, however, being only 5'10", Ulis could struggle against taller defenders. That is where Knight could come in, but it is up to you to decide if you're willing to pay him 8 figures for this role. Alternatively, Knight could see some minutes at the shooting guard as well. You also have a fourth option at the point guard in Ronnie Price, but he's in his 30s, expiring and definitely a tier below the other three, so playing time will be a rarity for him. With Devin Booker at the shooting guard, the Suns present us with a backcourt full of potential. The combo of Booker and Bledsoe could last for years to come and is one that you can absolutely build upon. Especially due to his age, Booker might actually be the most valuable piece you currently have. And he is only going to get better, and the rating in the 90s isn't too far off for him. With Leandro Barbosa behind him, the Suns employ an aging veteran in an important role, and this might already be a reason enough to make some changes. There is a noticeable talent gap between Booker and Barbosa, and on top of that, Barbosa is also expiring. He does have a team option coming up, but once again it's your choice if you want to take that or look for a better and preferably also a younger solution. Elijah Millsap is then not only the worst player on the team, but as he's approaching his 30s, he's also not getting much better, and since he's also expiring, it probably makes sense to not include him in your long-term plans. At the small forward, the Suns have TJ Warren as the clear-cut starter, and he is another player full of star potential. He was able to show that a while back before he got injured, and despite a somewhat lackluster three-point shot, he is still an offensive force to be reckoned with. Behind him, Derrick Jones might be a most athletic player, but that is likely not enough to get consistent minutes as the backup small forward, especially if the power forward has better options available. Your starter here at the power forward could be Alan Williams, although Marquese Chris makes a strong case as well. Chris, however, is actually better suited for the small forward, and thanks to his versatility and his rather high rating, I think he would be an excellent sixth man off the bench. Williams could then start as a more inside-focused player, however, one that is not overly capable of scoring in the post. Jared Dudley is also listed as a power forward here, but just like Chris, his rating actually increases at the small forward. Still, he can play both positions and is good enough to get some minutes at either one of them. With Derrick Jones likely not playing at the small forward, Dudley and Chris can share the duty as backup forwards. Also, Dudley's contract kind of forces you to play him. Your man in the middle could either be Tyson Chandler or Alex Len, depending on personal preference. Chandler is slightly higher rated, but already 34 years old, while Len hopefully has a large part of his career still ahead of him. Both have a remotely similar skill set, so they can nicely back each other up without the need for major adjustments. Dragan Bender then remains as the third option, at least for now. He's only 18 years old and has potential written all over him. For the moment, the rotation might not have a spot for him, but as soon as his rating jumps up a few points, you should try to make some room for him. With Alan Williams and Alex Len, you have two expiring contracts who might be crucial to your rotation. But at least with Len you have nothing to fear, since you can bring him back with a contract extension, or if that fails, he will become a restricted free agent. Whether you bring him back on a one-year qualifying offer or try to sign him to a larger, longer-term contract is up to you, of course. Williams, on the other hand, will become an unrestricted free agent, and there is nothing you can do about that. He will be a priority in your offseason, so put a bit of cash on the side to bring him back. Price and Millsap are also both on their way out, and looking at their ratings, that is probably for the best. The Suns also have 3 team options coming up, of which you likely want to take at least 2. I think the options for Warren and Booker are no-brainers, while $4 million for another year of Leandro Barbosa is very much up for discussion. Like the majority of young teams in the league, cap space is not an issue for the Suns. They still have close to $19 million available this season, and next year that amount will rise to almost $35 million. If we subtract the two options on Booker and Warren, you should still have close to $30 million once you enter free agency. That should be more than enough to bring back your free agents, even if you have to match an offer sheet on Len, and you will still likely have something left to fill a hole here and there. The Suns have a nice collection of draft picks and own all of their first rounders for the next 4 years. Apart from a few additional second rounders, they also own the first round pick for Miami for 2018, although with a top 5 protection on it. Quick note on the side, as far as I know that pick is actually top 7 protected in real life, but I just assumed 2K was unable to set the protection to anything else other than top 5 or top 10, and so they went with top 5 instead. Be that as it may, if that pick lands inside the top 5 in 2018, the Heat will keep it and instead send an unprotected first rounder for 2019 over to Phoenix. And now, as usual, before we go into the moves, our 3 key questions to ask before entering year 1 with the Phoenix Suns. Question number 1, who will score inside? When you look at your big man, you will quickly notice that none of them is a great inside scorer. Especially in the post, all of them are lacking behind a bit, with 18-year-old Dragan Bender or Alex Len probably the best post-scoring options in the group. You do have a bunch of capable slashers in the squad, but you might still find that a true inside presence is needed. If you do, a post scorer would be an excellent trade target. Question number 2, are you willing to pay Brandon Knight $56 million to be a backup point guard? Even if you play Knight ahead of Ulis in the rotation, he will only see limited playing time behind the much stronger Eric Bledsoe. The more likely scenario is having him as a third option, since Ulis is not only better but also younger and especially much cheaper. There is playing time to be had for Knight at the shooting guard, but just like at the point guard, Devin Booker will play heavy minutes here, and last season he was averaging 35 minutes a game. That amount will only increase, leaving maybe 10 to 15 minutes for somebody else. For the moment, money is not an issue, true, but that might not keep you from evaluating Knight as severely overpaid. And question number 3, how long will you ride out Tyson Chandler and Leandro Barbosa? Both in their 30s, Barbosa and Chandler currently have important roles in your rotation. Barbosa of course won't start, but he is your default backup shooting guard, while Chandler could start at the center over Len and Bender. Chandler is on the contract for the next 3 years, Barbosa could come back for 1 more year on his team option, but both of them won't get much better. Sooner or later, it will be time to look for replacements, be that in your own rotation, in the draft, in free agency, or on other teams' rosters. There are 2 players who I think we can all agree are pretty much untouchable unless you want to go for a true blockbuster trade. Those 2 players are Eric Bledsoe and Devin Booker. For me, the list doesn't stop there, because a tier below them we can find some excellent young players on cheap deals who are always extremely valuable to every franchise. Those players are TJ Warren, Marquese Chris and Tyler Ulis, but also, since he will become a restricted free agent, Alex Len. Allen Williams can then be added with a bit of a question mark. Yes, he is one of the better players and he's also still very young, but he is on an expiring contract. I think when you have signed him to a longer term extension, that is when you can put him back on the list. And with that, I think we're through with the situation overview. Here are 3 moves to make in year 1 in MyGM or MyLeague mode with the Phoenix Suns. Move number 1, switch Marquese Chris and Jared Dudley to small forward and switch Brandon Knight to shooting guard. I outlined this a bit in the situation overview already, and if we look at their skill set, I think it shouldn't surprise us that both Chris and Dudley get rating increases when they are switched from power forward to small forward. Chris gets a rating boost from 76 to 78, immediately making him the best small forward on the team. Dudley gets bumped up to 76 and is now only a single point behind Warren and miles ahead of Derrick Jones. Since Knight will have a hard time finding playing time at the point guard and his rating actually increases when he's switched to shooting guard, we will do exactly that. Knight goes up to 75 and can now overtake the expiring Barbosa as the backup behind Booker. That way you get at least some value out of his contract. Those rating increases do not only help your rotation, they will also affect your team's overall rating, and if you simulate your seasons, that can show in a few additional wins here and there. Since none of the three players are up for new contracts, their increased ratings won't have any effect on how much money they demand, at least not for the moment. With those changes made, your rotation could now look something like this. Bledsoe and Booker remain the starters in the backcourt, with either Chris or Warren as the starting small forward, plus Williams and either Chandler or Len down low. Off the bench, you can bring Ulis and Knight, who conveniently replaces the expiring Barbosa, then, depending on who starts, Chris or Warren, as well as Jared Dudley with minutes to split between the small forward and power forward. This leaves you with a very nice 4-man rotation at the 2 forward spots, consisting of only the best players you have available at those positions. At the center, things once again depend on who starts, either Len or Chandler can back the other one up here. Another quick note on the side, if you decide against switching Knight to shooting guard and keep him as the third option at point guard, I would personally recommend a trade. His contract is simply too much of a burden to only play him sporadically. Move number 2. Sign Alex Len to a 3-year contract extension. If nothing is done, Len will become a restricted free agent after the season. That in itself isn't much of an issue, since it means that you can still bring him back if you really want to. However, there are a few good reasons not to wait that long. Number 1, his qualifying offer would only be for 1 more year. After that, he will hit the free market as an unrestricted free agent, likely also with a higher rating, and that means you are now competing with 29 other teams and will have to spend big money to make him return. Reason number 2, despite only being a restricted free agent, there's always the risk of another team making him an offer. Once that happens, you are either forced to let him walk or match that offer, and you lose all control over how high his salary will actually be. And finally, the third reason, with a contract extension during the regular season, you will almost always be able to save money compared to an offer in free agency. Sure, you are only able to sign him for a maximum of 3 years, but his salary will more than make up for that. I was able to re-sign him for a flat $10.5 million a year, and for a player of his caliber, that is certainly a good deal. And move number 3, prepare the team for the next steps in the offseason. Yep, we are not going to make a trade in this video. I was thinking about trading both Brandon Knight and Tyson Chandler, but ultimately decided against it. For now, Knight is a good, although very expensive fit in his role as the backup shooting guard, and Chandler is, despite his age, a defensive force inside. Additionally, the trade market doesn't look too bright for either one of them, probably in large parts also due to their contracts. So I decided to skip trading for this one, and we can now move right into the offseason. The Suns will in all likelihood miss the playoffs, and you should at the very least end up with a top 10 pick. With that pick, I would heavily prioritize a post-scoring big man, preferably one who can play both the power forward and the center position. If you can't find the big man, then a young combo guard makes sense, someone who can be the third option for now for both the point guard and shooting guard spots. That third option right now is Leandro Barbosa, but not for long anymore. I would personally decline his team option here, since you can find better alternatives in free agency, or if you really want him back, he's willing to do so for less money. The options on Booker and Warren should of course be accepted. Your number 1 priority in free agency should now be to bring back Alan Williams, even if you drafted someone better than him. Williams should be somewhat affordable and can be brought back for the full 4 years. Apart from that, you can keep an eye out for a solid combo guard, provided you didn't draft one already. And other than that, you really don't have much else to take care of. With at least 1 rookie and 1 or 2 free agents fresh under contract, you can now fill the end of your bench and move on. Now, you might be a bit disappointed by the lack of trading in this video, but honestly, I think stability is what Phoenix needs right now. While they do not have all the pieces in place yet, they also do not have any major holes. Above all, now is the time to be patient. Let the young guys develop, try to bring in the occasional upgrade for the bench here and there, and maybe also make a few low-key moves to save some money. Even a guy like Tyson Chandler, who is getting old and still demands a lot of money, can still be kept around for 1 to 2 more seasons, or until you feel confident enough with the younger guys. And as long as guys like Chandler and Knight work out for you and you can afford them, feel free to keep them around. The true big-time contract extensions are still a few years away, and right now you can allow yourself to spend a bit more than needed. All in all, the Suns are a team much like Minnesota, only maybe not that promising. They have their future core mostly in place, it will only take a while for that to develop to its true potential. If you want to fly under the radar for a bit while developing a true superstar in Devin Booker, the Suns could be your team. And that would be all from my part. As always, let me know what you think about the Suns as a team to control in MyGM or MyLeague mode. Leave a thumbs up if you like this video, or if you want to support the channel, then click on subscribe. Thank you all for watching, and I'll see you next time. Cheers.